Recording. Almost. I hereby call the Thursday, January 18th, 2024 Town of Frisco Planning Commission meeting. Emma, will you please take roll?
Commissioner Connolly here. Commissioner Day is not here yet. Commissioner Forsyth here. Commissioner Lesmes here. Commissioner Stabile
Here.
Commissioner Tain
Here.
Commissioner Withrow.
Yes. Cheryl distributed the January 4th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Are there any comments, corrections, or do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I wasn't here, so I'll recuse myself on that vote. All right, at this time, I will open up the floor to public comment. If you are here to make public comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda, now is your opportunity. If you're in the audience, please step to the podium, state your name and address. If you are online, please raise your hand and state your name and address and keep your comments to 3 minutes. I am seeing none, so I will close the public comment portion of tonight's agenda. And notate for the record that Commissioner Day has joined us. Welcome. No problem. At this time, we'll move on to agenda items. First agenda item number is planning file number MAJ-23-0012. A sketch plan review of the major site plan application for a proposed residential townhome development consisting of 4 units located at 160 Forest Drive, Lot 2, West Frisco 70 sub, number 2, applicant Seth Francis with Blue River Builders. At this time, I will turn it over to staff. I believe it's Emily.
All right, so tonight we are here to review a sketch plan for 160 Forest Drive. As you know, this is not any formal approval at this time. This is just so the applicant can hear feedback from the Planning Commission. The property is currently undeveloped and is zoned residential medium density. The surrounding properties to the south and east are also zoned RM. North of the site is Summit County and west of the site is I-70. So here you have a little aerial image. The site does consist of steep slopes and significant rock outcroppings. Project rendering. So for RM district dimensional standards, the applicant is proposing 4 units on site, where up to 10 units are permitted per zone district standards. This is due to the natural constraints of the site. So you see the 4-unit layout on the screen right now. The sketch plan is meeting the setbacks, lot coverage, and height requirements for residential medium density. We'll start with the steep slopes analysis. So the UDC limits development on steep slopes and defines a steep slope as anything over 15%. And then there's different categories and disturbance, allowed disturbance per each category. So for 15 to 30% slopes, 50% of that entire area is permitted to be disturbed. And for greater than 30%, up to 15% of that area is allowed or permitted to be disturbed. So you see the slope disturbance table on the screen. But for the shading that the applicant provided, so this is the whole lot that you see, and you see the extent of, the length of the lot, I guess, and how far back it goes and where the development is located. The green shaded is 0 to 15%. The yellow shaded is 15 to 30%, and the pink is over 30% slopes. So as is typical of steep slopes and drainage and grading, that will all be reviewed and approved by the town engineer. He has provided preliminary red line plans to the applicant, which were also included in your packet. So there are a few comments there, but when it comes back to final review, there'll be a more thorough review by the town engineer. Moving on to access and parking. Access is proposed off 164 or Forest Drive, which is the only frontage facing a street. And the driveway is meeting with requirements. The proposed site plan has 3 3-bedroom units and 1 2-bedroom unit. So that requires 11 parking spaces for the development. No guest parking is required because it's only 4 units. So the applicant is showing 12 spaces, and I have another rendering. So for now, visualizing that those red X's are the exterior parking spaces proposed. And then here you can see the garage spaces along with just a rough location of those exterior parking spaces. So as you can see, there's unit A, which is the 2-bedroom unit, and then B, C, and D are all 3 bedrooms. So unit A actually has sufficient parking within the garage. And then the other 3 units are all utilizing the parking, the exterior parking spaces shown in the red X's. So staff has talked to the applicant about the layout and has recommended that the applicant remove the extra parking space in front of unit A, as 2 spaces are sufficient for that space. So dedicating that parking space in front of it, creating a tandem space, is confusing for a development with 4 units. So just streamlining where the parking spaces are allocated. And then also providing a clear parking management plan. So we would see at final review the layout of the garages and the full parking spaces. So we have a clear idea of the boundaries. And then for that tandem space located on adjacent to unit A on that right-hand side, providing turn radius to move out of the driveway. So right now it's not clear that that space is actually functional. So staff has requested a new parking layout and plan for final review. However, as far as quantity, he's meeting that. And then, like I said, recommending where those spaces are allocated for each unit. Moving on, we have snow storage and landscaping. So the applicant is meeting the snow storage requirements for the main parking area, but does not show snow storage for the uncovered decks. So that staff has brought this up to the applicant. He is aware of that. The UDC doesn't limit the snow storage on steep slopes. So you are allowed to have snow storage off those back uncovered patios or decks. But that will have to be considered in the drainage plan. So again, that's further reviewed by the town engineer, and showing that additional snow storage on that side will be required at final review. And then so for landscaping, the proposed site is not meeting the landscaping requirements. 43 trees and 25 shrubs are required because of the size of the lot. The site plan shows 8 trees being planted and 20 existing trees to remain. So this is, again, staff has talked to the applicant about this, requiring meeting the landscaping requirements, but also acknowledging that due to the site that we'll need an analysis on what can actually grow on those slopes and what type of vegetation is proposed. So again, not meeting requirements, but the applicant is aware of that. Moving on to residential development standards. Staff found that the application materials use a variety of building elements to show articulation. However, staff found that the units show repetition and duplication, and is concerned that some of the units appear identical, which is not permitted per the UDC. So specifically kind of looking at that east elevation, it looks like 2 duplicate units. So staff recommends that the planning commission give feedback on that to the applicant on the building facade. Other than the building facade, staff found that the application is meeting the material standards, the roof standards, and color standards for UDC requirements, or for the residential development standards. And the application does not have any, or appear to have any bulk plan encroachments. We did receive a public comment. This was included in your packet. I got this in an email. So we have forwarded this to the town engineer, and we'll be forwarding the application to Summit County Planning and then Summit County Public Health to get further feedback on this application. We did send the sketch off to a few referral agencies like engineering, Summit Fires, Summit County GIS Department, and a few others, which provided feedback. But again, at time of final review, it will all go back to the referral agencies, and we'll work with the applicant to resolve those comments prior to being scheduled for a public hearing. And that's all I have. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission discuss parking, snow storage and landscaping, and the facade of the application. I'm here to answer any questions. Seth is also in the audience and may like to address the Planning Commission as well.
Thank you, Emily. April, let's start with you. Do you have questions for staff?
Sure. So you mentioned that you're already talking through like the parking restrictions. Could you pull that slide back up, please? So are you going to remove the tandem parallel
So-
parking? Is that the recommendation?
Not necessarily removing it entirely, but making sure that it has a feasible turn radius. I don't see that right now, so I wouldn't say that this meets the tandem parking, but if the applicant can rearrange, provide a little bit more space, that will be required to be reviewed at final submittal.
Okay. And is it allowed to have visitors park on the street?
No. I mean,
For sure.
yeah,
Oh, I
right.
see.
So you need a plan for all parking on site. And just to be clear, there's no visitor parking required for this application because there's only 4 units. So that comes into play once there's 5 units. But the spaces you see on this site are for the individual units themselves or to meet their bedroom count.
The other questions I have are around like the facade, as far as the repetition. I think there's probably going to be lots of discussion about that. It would be great to see some other materials to be used to kind of break up that pattern because it is very repetitive and the windows all kind of match the same layout. So I don't really have a question around that. I think that's it for right now for me.
Any questions for staff?
Couple. The town engineer commented on the current tandem parking spots off to the right side of the plan, which I imagine are, that's the extra second and third spot for unit B there, since it only has one interior. Town engineer mentioned that those would maybe need to be dimensionally set for parallel parking. Can you explain what would kick that in instead of tandem parking, that we would call that parallel parking?
So if it was parallel parking, would it be considered tandem, or why the recommendation for parallel?
It's not long enough for parallel spaces because town requires a longer space. I think it's 20 feet
Right.
for parallel spaces. So at what point do those switch from a standard tandem spot dimensionally into parallel spots dimensionally? What?
My understanding of that, right now, the parking spaces are measured at 9 by 18 feet when they're supposed to be 9 by 18 and a half. So that will also have to be changed. So I think that was a suggestion for just thinking through how to get those 2 spaces to fit onto the parking space or the asphalt.
I guess I'm still not quite clear though, because if parallel spots on a street are dimensionally are even longer than 20 feet. So when would that kick in that these would actually have to be 20 feet long instead of the 18 and a half? I understand they're only 18.
So I guess UDC, we allow tandem spaces for residential parking for multi-unit multi-family developments, which are these parking dimensions. Almost, yeah. So as far as going from 18 and a half to 20, we've been using the standard 9 by 18.5 for the UDC standard. So I guess I'm not sure if that's comes into play when it switches from residential to commercial or how that works.
Potentially, maybe if you're accessing it from the side and you need that extra room to wiggle into it. Okay, I'm just curious, because he is talking about parallel dimensions with this even 18.5.
I guess,
And so that I'm curious, if he interprets those as parallel spots, then it's a whole other, and it's 4 more feet that they need to have.
from him too, because my understanding was that it just needed to be that 18.5.
Yeah, I was curious about that as well. Another question, a bunch of the comments on the engineer plans talk about the swale needing to be moved away from the house. That would necessitate increasing their site disturbance, right? And so that's going to put them potentially over, and so we're gonna need to see that site disturbance line
So-
expanded to include that, all the swale and everything associated with it, right?
So any disturbance will have to be calculated within that slope boundary.
Okay. And then one other question, it looks like they have some snow storage overlapping with existing trees. And typically, I think we've seen that people don't have snow storage and trees in the same spot. What's the town's position on
Right,
that? Can you
so
snow
the-
store right
The
through a tree?
UDC actually states that there can be landscaping in snow storage as long as it's can withstand that. So I know it's kind of a gray area, but assuming that it's existing and
But
well established.
they're well under.
Right,
landscape
so,
requirements, so when they come in with new plantings, we're gonna ask that.
right,
that
we're gonna
doesn't-
have to reevaluate that on where they're locating all of the landscaping and then the snow storage.
Okay. My last question, I don't even know how to ask this, but the neighbor who referred to potential blasting, from what I can tell, they're going down in one spot 20 feet into the bedrock. That's seems like it's gonna require blasting. Would we require a soils report to that depth? So that we
So
know
we-
exactly what's going on
The
down there?
soils report, I guess, I don't know how deep it is, and that will be something that Chris will review. As far as blasting, we've been talking about this internally because we're not used to this. We don't have anything in the UDC or like building code. I talked to Rick about this. It would be an outside agency, whether that's CDOT or whomever. That's why we're going to be reaching out to the county. The applicant has stated that they're not using blasting, so if you would like to ask him on his technique and proposed,
Okay. It doesn't seem like a zoning issue that within our purview, but I was just curious what the town is.
it's a new thing, yeah.
That's all. Thank you.
Jessica? Thanks, Emily. Quick question. I'm sure that there's not 2 property lines on this site plan here on that southern edge. What am I looking at?
Setback, or the building boundary, is that what you're seeing?
There's like,
Oh, you're talking about this?
yeah, there's 2 lines on the very southern portion. Just move that cursor down right there. Yep, there's that line and then there's that line.
Looks like the applicant will be able to answer that when we get to the.
What we call skew, that shouldn't even be there.
Okay. So, yeah, because it was the same line weight.
We were masking out the extra that's in the drawing.
Yeah.
They caught an extra line there. That line is not there.
Thank you.
It's a good spot.
Okay, just a question, did anybody ever talk about variance on this site for development to avoid some of those steep slopes? If somebody did request a variance, what would be like?
So there's specific criteria, outlined in the UDC, for variances. So it has to be, it's not just a want, it's that it is absolutely not feasible without this variance. It's not something that has been proposed or discussed.
If the
You can
applicant did ask, I'll hop in.
Yeah.
This- For the current proposal of multiple units, the town staff would have to recommend against the variance. They could
Right.
still apply, and we would tell them right from the front, they have an option to apply, but they wouldn't have staff support. Because you probably could put one small house in and that would be reasonable use of the property. So it doesn't meet the legal criteria for variance. But like Emily said, it hasn't been discussed or requested by the applicant.
Okay, I appreciate that. I don't think any further questions. Thank you.
Lena, questions for staff?
So that entire front area is gonna be asphalt. How would somebody know where the outside parking spaces are? Are they striped somehow?
Right, so I did bring this up to the applicant that a management plan would have to be included. Once the final parking layout is included, to know who's parking where, whether that's signage, stripe,
Yeah, okay, I guess just don't understand. How would somebody know that, as an example, I'm pointing to those two parking
Right.
spaces over there, that that's even parking?
it would have
would
to
have
be
to be
signed
some
for
kind
them
of
to
a
know that.
striping
We don't
or something.
require signage in the UDC, but because of the layout and where the units are placed in relation to the parking spaces, that was a recommendation from staff, is to provide some sort of
Something.
something.
And would people be able to, okay, apart from those parking spaces that are drawn on here, are people allowed to park outside of their garages? Because it just seems,
Right, and so that was another thing I brought up to the applicant, was how do we limit people from pulling up and blocking other spaces specifically between unit B and C? And so if that's something you'd like to ask the applicant, I would suggest that.
okay. And then two more questions. The little boxes with the landscaping, it says porch. Is
There
that supposed to be like a landscape island that separates?
it is.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. My next question has to do with snow storage. If I understood you correctly, are you saying that they're putting snow storage behind the building?
So not that it's shown, but there are uncovered decks. Our UDC requires snow storage for uncovered decks. There's nothing in the UDC that prohibits snow storage on steep slopes, but within the steep slopes standards, all drainage has to be accounted for, so that would include that additional snow storage.
Okay, so the snow storage proposed behind the building is
It's
just
not
for the
there yet,
patios.
but they're going to have to provide snow storage for the patios, correct?
Okay. But the snow storage for the driveway
Is all
is accounted for. Okay.
Yep.
And then for the landscaping, so the number of trees required is based on the size of the lot?
It
Is that
is.
correct?
Correct.
And they're disturbing less than half of the lot?
Yes.
But is there landscaping back there that can count towards?
So there are existing trees. They are 33 existing trees. They're proposing to remove 13 of those, and they're kind of scattered throughout. There's some up front, there's some in the back. That middle area is mostly rock, so there's no real, landscaping on that area.
So where are they gonna put it?
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge, and that's something that I said that we would, work with them on and figure out a solution on how to meet those requirements.
Okay. I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Ira, questions for staff?
Oh, you got the color drawing up. That must be some country's colors. Anyway, is any of these colors specifically rock or could be
No.
dirt?
These are the slopes.
Right, so are any of the, because some of the slope is rock.
Well, so anything over 30% is pink. So I would, count that as a significant slope, but that doesn't define material as rock or not.
And we don't have a drawing that shows what's rock or what's.
You can actually see it as kind of the rock outcropping.
Uh-huh.
Outcrop area.
Oh, that far away.
It's kind of all throughout the site. It's heavily
So
rock.
the rock outcrop is here, but there's rock over here because we're talking about blasting to get this development built.
So the applicant has not proposed blasting.
But I heard going down 20 feet in rock.
Right.
We'll hear what he has to say. He asked me about the architecture. There's definitely repetition there. Something needs to be done to remediate that repetition. Historically, on a question, is this the first ever application on this lot ever? Do we know?
I don't, actually, I think there was.
Very old, there was actually a conditional use approval in some other things in the past. I believe a variance was requested like 15, 20 years ago also. So there are files, but they are more than 10 to 15 years old.
And you're really confused when you talk about maybe parallel parking. Was that be parallel to Forest? Is that what they're talking about, making it parallel?
No. There would be no parking on Forest Drive because that is not permitted. All parking has to be on site.
But I mean parallel to Forest, because Forest seems to be the frontage here, right? Isn't that going around in a little bit of an arc?
Right.
So they couldn't park along there? No.
They're not, they can park on their property, so there's no setback requirement for parking. So if they were to propose that, but that's not what's being proposed.
Okay. All right. That's it.
Candace, questions for staff?
Katie has taught me the rules, so I have learned. I have no questions for staff. And I've got other comments later.
Never did anything wrong. You're brand new.
It's good to know like when to ask and when to answer. I will say I own 140 Forest Drive, so 2 properties down and it abuts, but I have no bias to this development. Thank you.
Yes, Andy.
Regarding that 20-foot cut, a lot of jurisdictions will talk about like a 2-to-1 slope or a cut like that, which would again increase the disturbance. Do we do anything like that, or we would require a shoring plan if they are proposing that they're going to be able to do 20-foot cut within 2 feet of their building? Or are we're gonna assume that they're gonna disturb to some angle from that depth?
Right, so that's not outlined in the UDC, but we just have it as any of that disturbance, so that disturbance boundary, you know, whether it be 5 foot, 10 feet, whatever they're proposing, it's line from there, and then that they have to revegetate that disturbed area. But as far as the slope of that, there isn't a requirement. There is a requirement on, and I'm not going to phrase this right. I have it in the staff report on how it was worded, but more than a 10-foot difference in the proposed and final grade, and so they are meeting that requirement.
I would assume that the engineer is going to ask for some kind of shoring report if they think they're going to
Correct,
cut
yeah.
20 feet
And-
down, they're going to have a shoring.
So Chris has done just a preliminary review. I don't think he got through the whole soils report, so his comments didn't really address that.
We can ask that. That's probably for the next one. Okay, thanks, guys.
Yep, any additional questions for staff? Most of mine have been asked, but one question I do have is like, what happens, is there any extra bonds put on this, or like if they cut into the rock or blast some rock away and then don't follow through on building the house, like what's the town's recourse on if we're disturbing steep slopes of this magnitude?
So we require IAs for
Excavation,
Yeah.
demo permits.
but if the demo permit is included with the building permit, we don't require an IA. That could be something that we talk about as a department, and see if there's a case to be had here for that, but that is not in our practice right now.
Cause my concern is we've seen number of projects, you know, clear, demolish, and then not
Right.
revegetate. They're still fencing up 4 years later.
Well, that's why we started requiring that IA during, you know, people jumping the gun on demoing without having their building permits submitted or anything like that. But I can, you know, see what you're getting at.
At the neighbor's house to this, that this creates a significant noise buffer, this granite rock wall from Interstate 70. So for them to disturb something that's beneficial to the neighborhood, and not have any recourse on that makes me a little anxious. And then does the town have any response to the public comment on, you know, wells in those neighborhoods and water and
So we
future
started-
planning for that? Because I know wells are starting to run dry in Frisco.
Right, so we, so those are for the properties to the north in Summit County. or would pertain to those properties. So we have started that discussion. I don't have any answers for you. We're gonna have to include Summit County and
Yeah.
talk to their public health department, I believe, are the ones who do the wells and all of that. So that will be part of the review process. Which I anticipate going, back and forth quite a bit between all these agencies.
Yeah.
Before coming forward with a plan.
Yeah, I just asked because it was such a specific comment.
Yeah.
By the public. I have no other questions for staff. Anybody else have follow-ups? All right, at this time, we will turn it over to the applicant. If you want to, whoever's presenting, step up, state your name for the record.
My name is Seth Francis. I'm with Blue River Builders and I'm the developer on this project.
Hey, Seth, welcome.
Yeah, it sounds like you've covered a lot. You understand the project, but yeah, excited to build a 4-unit here. I had looked at prior plan submission from like 20 years ago, and the idea was to, remove all that rock, half of the lot. So my goal coming into here was to meet all the requirements, not ask for any variances, make it as simple for everyone as possible to build. And as Emily said, it is zoned for 10 units. We're doing 4, and that we're trying to meet all the code and requirements. And I can answer a lot of your questions.
Yeah, if you have any specific, or we can just go around the table again and ask questions specifically to you if that's easier as well.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote some down before. So we understand about the facade and the repetition, and we will address that. In terms of the swale that's in the soils, we actually got an updated letter from the geotechnical engineer this morning, saying that we can fit it within the 2 feet that we have marked, and that a foundation drain can be provided to remove water. So that initial comment in the soils report that Chris McGinnis noted was just a recommendation, but not required for the geotechnical engineer. In terms of the parking, yes, the idea would be to assign each parking unit. So the ones that are in front of the garages, that would be assigned. So like unit A, that would be assigned to unit A, and we would mark that. And then as part of the HOA plan, we would put that in there as well, so that all the home owners would agree to those particular parking spots. Let's see. I had a point about the material on the lot. It is rock. It is a mountain of rock. In the front, right off Forest Drive, there is dirt there. And we were able to get some soils testing, but pretty much everything behind that is a big rock. And Kelsey, to address your comment about the sound, the rock is so much taller than the 20 feet that we're excavating. Even standing out there, you do notice that it does block I-70, and you actually hear more of the sound coming from the exit further to the south. I don't think that's gonna change. It's just the mountain.
Yeah.
Well, let me stop there and see if
Yep, I'm sure there'll be more questions. So Candace, why don't we start with you if you have questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. And forgive me because I'm an engineer, so these are gonna be very engineering. And because I used to live right down the street, so I know the area. So coming from the north, I guess, have you guys looked at site distance into or out of the driveway on Forest Drive? It's probably not something in our code or that we typically look at developments, but because it's on a curve and there's some vegetation, it's actually, and people drive fast on Forest Drive, it's kind of poor site distance already without the driveway. So I guess, I don't know if it's something you would look at but something to think about for people coming in and out of the driveway.
okay, yeah.
So it's not a question. Going back to the swales, so in the wall drawing, it shows kind of like a swale above the retaining walls. Will that stay in place? And if so, is that covered in the existing disturbance limits?
Yes, and I've also brought Jared Buxton, who is the architect of VHH Partners, who has some technical.
Yeah, we'll also have some area drains.
If you
that-
could speak into the microphone, just so people online can hear.
But we'll also have some area drains at each of those patios that will gather water that's coming down from up the upper slope and take that via pipes in under the foundation out to daylight or dry well.
And we've also are going to engage a civil engineer to do a detailed drainage.
Exactly. A lot of those steep slopes on the north side of the building are rock faces, which our soils engineer says we can basically cut to one, basically on those rock faces. So that's what basically makes up that entire north side, which is where our swale would be. We'll be waterproofing the foundation walls with waterproofing and waffle drain, so that there will be no water infiltration or anything like that, as well as a upgraded foundation drain that will take all the drainage to a dry well.
A site drainage plan would
Oh,
be
yes,
good, just.
like, Seth said, we are employing a civil engineer that's going to do a drainage plan and utility plan for us.
Awesome. One other question / comment, have you guys observed flooding in the area on Forest Drive?
If we notice what.
Flooding,
I haven't seen any, but I assume you have.
it's a low point on the road, so I would just say, maybe take a look at that, have your,
Sure.
incorporate that into your site drainage
We
plan.
do have all of our garages and basement space on a lower level as well. All of our living space is really up on the second level. But we will definitely have our engineer take that into consideration.
And it might be some coordination with the town, because is it a town road or a county road? Area.
Yeah, we obviously work with the Public Works.
And also just to note, the comments that are brought up now, Emily, when she sends the referral, she'll make sure that they go directly to Chris too, to make sure he takes them into consideration. So kind of just as a extra precaution.
And I've actually been emailing with Chris to provide much more information and answer.
Yeah, this is one of the more unique sites. I think there's the engineering analysis probably more robust. Like I had one more. Oh, you mentioned you're not blasting. How do you intend to excavate the rock?
We will be chipping, drilling and chipping.
Yeah, I've already met with an excavator, Todd Alcock, who's Alpine Specialty, so he's here in Frisco. He's the one who told me no blasting is allowed in town. And we had talked about chipping away at it, and there's also another method I'm not that familiar with, but you could essentially, after all, yeah, where your expansion, makes a foam in that expand and breaks the rock. But I don't reckon. Yeah, but it seems like chipping is the way to go, and they're comfortable with that and do a lot of that around the county.
That's one question.
Ira, questions for the applicant?
You mentioned hydraulics. That sounds like going back to the miners of 1880. I mean, they broke rock with water. And it was pretty quiet.
Were you there?
I guess.
Sorry, low blow.
Okay, I bet. I'm done.
Oh, come on.
I'm good. Accepted.
Apology accepted.
Oh,
Guys,
cover
make
me
up.
Go flush now.
back.
I don't really have any questions other than, are there basements? Did you say basements?
There, of course, walkout, on the backside, there's foundation walls and.
No,
No fully buried basement. No.
3 stories, right? These are 3 stories? Okay. I think you've answered my other questions, so I don't have any more.
Jessica, questions for the applicant?
No questions, thank you.
Andy?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Just one question, you were talking about the chipping, has that been done, the person that you're working with here in Summit County, has it been done in Summit County before, and has he done it?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
They've been up here 20 years, they're one of the biggest excavators up here.
Okay.
Well, I'm definitely hired as the best for this, because it's not a simple job.
Right.
And I also have no questions. Are there any other follow-ups? All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to open up the floor to public comment. If there is public comment on tonight's agenda item in front of us, now is your opportunity to speak. If you're in the chambers, please step to the podium, state your name, address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you're online, please raise your hand.
Diana?
Right, Diana, I'm gonna.
In person first.
Oh, is there one in person? Yeah, please come to, you're gonna do the chambers first, so please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Hannah. Sorry. I live at 181 Forest Drive, right on the north side, adjacent to this property. So you know, for years I've walked by and my husband and I was like, how should I build here? Maybe a single family home, maybe. And so I guess when I saw the notice, it was like 4-unit place. Wow. Similar concerns. I know just the house being on the market, there's been a lot of foot traffic. My property shares the spot. It kind of splits right up the middle. Well, we have about 2/3 maybe. And that first rise of the rock, I have 4 kids, they play up there. So I'm just wondering, you know, they mentioned making a vertical wall. I'm wondering at what point, where is that? Is there gonna be a barrier? Is my property gonna be secured with what's going on here? I don't know a lot of how all this works, honestly. But I'm a little nervous. Also, we have a well right there as well. It is a low point. Somebody mentioned the road there. There's always huge collection of water. There's all this drainage in that, so I don't. I have more questions, but I can't think of that.
Thank you. We do take these comments very seriously and into consideration. So thank you for your time this evening. At this time, I will move on to Diana online. If you want to unmute yourself, please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Diana Brickle. I live at 141 Forest, so I'm literally just across the street. And I'm not opposed to somebody building on this site, but it get like my neighbor, I was expecting more of a single family home. I have just 3 sort of questions / concerns. One is people parking on the street, which does periodically happen when the Mormon church is right nearby too, so that does periodically happen there, but particularly if it's on that side with the curve or if people are pulling out, I think that would be really hard to see. The other thing is I'm just wondering about the sort of noise and imposition of the construction process on the humans who live nearby. But I'm actually more worried about the wildlife impact. And I don't know if you guys are concerned about this at all, but there's a lot of wildlife in that area. There's a lot of moose that come through there. And I would just like to see just something, some portion of that addressed in some way, if possible. So that's about it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your comments, Diana. Are there any other comments at this time? I am seeing none, so I'm going to close the public comment portion of this agenda item, and we will move on to commissioner comments, concerns, paying attention. If we could pull up that list again that you'd like us to discuss. Why don't we start with you, Jessica?
Thanks. Yeah, I do think right now, I know you'll address the parking issues when you come back to us at a later date. The facade, when you come back at a later date, it does look tight, in what we're seeing for 4 units. So I'll let you contemplate if you can fit it in a reasonable fashion or speak with 3 units. But otherwise, I do think you're meeting you know, what's in the code. I will agree, I've walked by this lot so many times and I'm like, wow, who's gonna build anything there? Maybe a single family home. So, yeah, I would also urge the town, if there is, you know, security to be taken, if that is appropriate and within the code, to consider that as well. So that's all I have.
Anything on facade?
I addressed, yeah, I said, I know that they'll come
Oh,
back
good.
with something that's different than what they showed us that meets the code. I think right now it doesn't. It concur with staff.
Andy?
Yeah, you know, I think we kind of, I think you've heard our concerns, and I know your next submittal will address a lot of those. Obviously, we're going to be looking pretty close at the parking and turning radiuses. I'd like to see them for all the garages too, not just for those couple of tandem spots. You know, how's the person get out of that single bay in the middle unit there without dinging the landscape planters, and you know, it's going to be a tricky move. Hopefully they've got a good backup camera. And then also, you know, I'm surprised that the line is so close. The line of disturbance is so close to the house. I think it's going to be really hard to construct. You can't put scaffolding up with that much space, you know, siding, fascia, all that construction. So I would assume that the town would require a pretty solid fence along the line that you're proposing as your limit of disturbance. And that's going to be hard to stick within the way you've got it drawn right now. So, you know, hopefully you can show us some more detail on how you plan to construct a house with a fence 2 feet away from it and 20 feet down and pour footings. And, you know, we'll be looking at that, but I trust our engineering department will be looking at that even closer. So good luck with that. But you know, otherwise the facade standards, yeah, I think it sounds like, yeah, it shouldn't be too hard for you guys to address. Yeah, I think mostly I'm going to be looking at how you plan to build this with a fence 2 feet away.
April?
I think most of my comments have been addressed, so I don't have anything at this moment.
Okay. Candace? And to echo some of what Andy said, I think the parking is gonna be interesting. I think turning movements will definitely be helpful for the parallel spots as well as the garages. And then just getting into and out of, back onto that driveway. Like I said, I think the driveway itself has limited sight distance, so I think just getting in and out is gonna be tricky. I also agree with Andy. I think the disturbance limits as shown on here are very tight and don't account for the drainage plan once it's done. So I think we'll want to revisit that just because the steep slopes are very tight within the disturbance limits. And I think looking at the drainage to adjacent properties, there's like, it's all coming down to here. So I think as you put a building up and you put these retaining walls, as great as your drainage is in your retaining walls, you still got to get all of that rock drainage somewhere around. And because we're so close in the setbacks, I think there might be some impacts to the adjacent properties drainage, or consider that in the drainage plan, I guess. And then the landscaping, again, near Forest Drive, I think we want it because it does make the development more beautiful, but just look at the site distance around there, because those trees are what block site distance now. And then, yeah, I think all the comments on the facade and address.
Ira?
Yeah, I will also take the easy way out and say a lot of comments I've heard are echoing mine. And this is a preliminary, and I think that you're getting the sense we have a lot of concerns. It's my experience that the lot's not built on because there aren't a lot of choices of where one can build a house with existing real estate in this town. So as you get down to, let's say, the end of the road, the less desirable properties are what remain. And so I'm going to title this a less desirable property, which would be translated as very challenging to build. So I think our concerns here is how you're really going to pull it off before you start spending a lot of money and realize you can't get it done. So, like I said, this is preliminary. Look forward to seeing the next step.
Thank you. Lena?
Yeah, what everybody else has said, I do think the facades need to be, you know, I guess fixed so that there's Yes, differentiated, thank you. And I share all the same concerns. I would say, some of the things that came up tonight are things that we would like additional details on. For instance, the safety of the top of the rock. What does that look like? The drainage that hasn't been really studied. The parking management situation and how is that gonna work with the parking? I don't understand if people are not allowed to park outside that unit B and C, because if they were parked there, it just seems like a mess would be created. So wildlife impact report, I don't know if that's way over the top, but anyway, it was brought up as a concern that there's wildlife there that we're impacting. And then the site triangle details, also want to see those. So I just want, looking to see more information with the next round of this project. Oh, about the site distance triangle. Yeah.
Any other comments? I would echo the same. I think that the duplicity is the big thing that sticks with me. And as we've seen, storms can roll in and dump on us for a week, and snow storage quickly becomes a problem. Drainage becomes a problem. So I would like to see a lot more detail and engineering on that, especially with the swale. Parking, I think we got to think realistically. We all make this look good on paper and fit it in, but how do people function in reality? Are they going to park in front of those garages that they're not supposed to? Yes. So, maybe you need to reconfigure the parking a little bit and, be good stewards of your neighbors. You have somebody with 4 kids and a construction site on rock is really enticing to kids. So, fencing, appropriate fencing and all of that. And I think it's come up more than once on the wildlife, and that probably should be something the town enforces a little more, as it is a part of our community plan coexisting with, the moose and the foxes. And the reality is there's an interstate there. So it's unfortunate that that's a wildlife impact zone because they've got to deal with that as well. But, I think you guys have really taken great consideration to our comments, and we look forward to seeing you at the next review.
Do we have any icons from principals? Examples as well?
I think I'm gonna call a quick 5-minute recess, so if you just don't mind us giving us 5 minutes to walk by and take a peek. All right, we're gonna recess for 5 minutes.
Okay.
No.
You've seen that house.
Yes, I've seen that house. But in there. Okay, I'm set.
All right, resume the Thursday, January 18th, 2024 Town of Frisco Planning Commission meeting. Moving on to agenda item number 2, planning file number MAJ-23-0008. A final review of the major site plan application for a proposed residential townhome development consisting of 3 units located at 400 Granite Street, Lot 1112, Block 19, Frisco Town Sub. Applicant Abigail Plain on behalf of Madacar LLC. Sorry if I said that wrong. And I will turn it over to staff for the staff report. Sally, take it away.
Okay. Screen up real quick. Oh, sorry. I've got like 3 screens. Yeah. Oh. What? Okay, awesome. So like Kelsey said, the second item tonight is a final review of the major site plan application for the new multifamily townhome development, 400 Granite Street. It was originally brought to the Planning Commission at the September 7th, 2023 meeting. Abby Plain is submitted for final review after receiving comments from the Planning Commission and referral agencies. The site is zoned residential high density. Surrounding properties to the east, west, and south are also zoned RH, with central core zoning to the north. To the west is a single family residence and a duplex property. To the east is the Aspen Square Townhome development. Today, the site consists of a single story commercial property, which was formerly the Summit School of Dance. This space is not currently being utilized by a commercial tenant. The proposed development consists of a new three bedroom units. Three new 3-bedroom units. There you go. Here are renderings from the project. Views are from the southwest and the northeast here. Permitted density for the RH district is 16 units per acre with a lot size of 0.16 acres. The site allows for the development of up to 3 dwelling units. Maximum lot coverage is 55% or 3,853 square feet. For the site, proposed lot coverage is 3,687 square feet or 52%. The minimum setbacks in the zone district are 20 feet for front yard and 10 feet for side and rear yard. Setbacks are proposed at the minimum amount. The maximum height is 35 feet and the applicant is proposing a maximum building height of 34 feet. Table. The application has been reviewed by the town engineer and there are no outstanding comments on the proposed grading and drainage of the site. 3 driveways are proposed for access, 2 on the west side of the site onto South 4th Ave and 1 on the south side onto Taylor Street Alley. A waiver request was submitted to and approved by Public Works for the less than required separation distance from the driveway on Taylor Street Alley to the intersection with Fourth Avenue. The minimum driveway width requirements are all being met and all outstanding comments have been by the Public Works Director have been addressed. So each unit is 3 bedrooms requiring 3 parking spaces per unit for a total of 9 spaces. No visitor parking is required. The proposed parking shows a 2-car garage with a stacked tandem space in the driveway for all units. If the planning commission finds that the layout of the parking is functional and complies with 2 out of 4 of the criteria listed in the staff report and on screen, the application meets this requirement for tandem parking. For snow storage, 279 square feet of snow storage is shown for 1,106 square feet of uncovered pave area and decks, meeting the 25% requirement. The applicant addressed planning commission concerns regarding snow storage and retention, stating in the narrative that snow storage calculations, including snow uncovered decks, have been added to the plans, and snow retention has been added to the roof plan in all areas that may shed onto decks and driveways. The application shows snow guards added to areas of concern for snow shedding. The need for snow guards, clips, fences, or other snow retention will be evaluated by the Town of Frisco Building Department as part of the building permit application review process. Snow storage locations are indicated on the plans as the cross-hatched areas labeled A through G. You can see those on this plan. Based on lot size, a minimum of 8 trees and 5 shrubs are required to be planted on site. The application shows 8 trees and 11 shrubs meeting the requirement. For facade standards, the applicant is showing a variety of building materials and elements on all 4 facades and provides architectural relief from the duplication between units. The application shows a combination of roof pitches of 412, 612, and flat elements, meeting the requirement. For building materials, the proposed materials include matte or low gloss metal panels, wood beams, trim and siding, chopped stone veneer, and barnwood siding. Roof materials consist of dark brown asphalt shingles and rust colored corrugated metal. The application meets the standard for building materials. Here are some of the updated project renderings. And then here are the bulk plane renderings. The proposed bulk plane encroachments are 350 cubic square feet, which has not changed since sketch plan review. At sketch, commissioners agreed that the bulk plane encroachments meet code requirements. If the commission finds that the proposed encroachments provide substantial architectural relief, the application meets the standard. So here are my recommendations or staff recommendations based on the findings. And that's everything. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you.
Lena, any questions for staff?
You started me.
Keeping you all on your toes.
So I'm sorry, Sally. Can you just describe what were the major changes that happened between sketch and final or?
Yeah. So the main concerns were snow storage, snow shedding, and let me pull up my. Let's see. So mainly snow removal, rooftop snow retention. There were comments on grout color being added to the material board, which was included on the material board that the applicant provided. And then also taking into consideration public comments. One public comment was regarding privacy, neighbor privacy on the east side of the property. Their east neighbors were concerned about kind of like window location or living room location being the same level as that neighbor's bedroom location. And the applicant addressed those concerns.
Okay.
So those are the major changes you've seen.
And the conditions, are they just standard conditions that you've added?
They were standard
Nothing major?
conditions. Yeah, so the first condition, if I can remember, so vacating the property lines between the lots 11 and 12, that's a standard condition with a final plat, meeting the requirements of the Summit County GIS department, which is just addressing changes and then finalizing the name of the development. And then satisfying the requirements of Excel Energy, and their final comment, which was in your packet, was just regarding location of the meters, which they will have to work out with their designer, I think, at the time of building permit submittal.
Okay, so good. Generally speaking, no issues.
No issues.
Got it. Thank you. That's my
Yeah.
question.
Ira, questions for staff?
It looks to me like it's pretty well endorsed. I was not here for the preliminary for sketch. And it looks like it's in compliance. It looks pretty nice, so I don't have anything to add.
All right, Candace, any questions?
I just have a question. What is the transformer clearance? So I don't know if you
Yeah.
guys. If that's
Um,
associated with the Excel comment.
Yes, so that was resolved and the applicant can also address that. But to my knowledge, the applicant did work with Excel to finalize the transformer location. It's located at the northeast corner of the lot. And Excel approved that location. It had adequate clearances, whatnot, so. Abby can elaborate on that though, if she feels the need to. All right. Cool, thanks.
April, questions for staff?
No questions for staff. Thank you.
Andy?
I have one just sort of more out of curiosity. Looking at the existing site plan, I don't see a property line that needs to be vacated, and I'm curious. I know we have some pretty odd shaped lots, but if there's a lot line down the length of it, that means we have 25-foot wide lots over there. Is that what we have, or where is
The
that line?
existing Frisco Town lots are 25 by 100.
Okay, and is there no problem on the town side that it's no longer an existing non-conforming lot because we are creating a new lot
Yes.
that's non-conforming?
You got it. And that's why we also require the vacation of lot line. So in the future, there's no confusion over a random line going down the middle. Also.
But the new lot is not
It's
an
open.
existing non-conforming, right? It's-
Correct.
So we're creating a new
We're making it
non-conforming
better.
lot. Okay,
Very
so
good.
just want to make sure
Sidewalks.
that.
Yeah, great question. I think that came up at sketch plan too, because it was a little, staff had to look into a little in the office back then because it was a unique that it still wasn't quite there. But with the former lots and the fact that it had been existing for that long.
So typically we're seeing 3 of those lots is what makes a conforming lot. So it can't be
And
a
that's
lot.
all
So
good.
just to provide some clarification, the width, is it 50 feet then? Or the frontage, so it is non-conforming technically, but it's the 2 lots, it's been acting as 1 lot for its existence, and we see that all over the place. So anytime you see more than 1 lot, when we're looking at these, it's several of those old town lots combined that have been 1 lot. Lot frontage is conforming.
Yeah.
Oh, it is? Lot frontage is conforming. Lot area is legal, non-conforming at this point, so.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
it.
Is that like a minimum lot size?
Lot area is minimum lot size, which
What's the minimum lot size?
10,500 square feet.
Which is 3 of the lots. 3 of the old town site lots?
Yes. Well, no, I'd have to not necessarily, because how many is 2? What's the existing?
Or town?
So this is
Townhome.
7,
But you
approximately
own the dirt
7,000
under you
square
on a
feet,
townhome.
a legal
So when you need a
Lot.
lot line?
10,500, so it is approximately
3.
3.
So 75
Times 100 and what?
100 by 25, I believe is an existing. That's still not.
I'm sorry, what are you? Yeah, what's your question?
We're all confused. I just keep.
I didn't understand all this, that there were such narrow town
Right,
site
so like
lots.
the first platted lots were 25 by 100 and they're, skinny lots, and people bought 5 or they bought 6. And then over time, they've just been acting as 1 lot. Summit County, if you go on the Summit County GIS data, you don't even see that line. It's when you do the survey that you see these underlying lot lines that have been essentially ignored or, not, it's been acting as one lot.
Okay, but in this zone district, the minimum lot size is,
10,500.
okay, so that's
And
why it's
the
non-conforming
existing
because it would
lot.
need to be
Yeah.
5'4". Okay.
Yeah.
I did not follow.
Okay.
I followed up.
Answer your question, there's exceptions in the code where townhomes don't have to be 10,500. It's the perimeter
Got it.
of it.
But
Yes.
wouldn't you, with the townhome, wouldn't you leave the lot line there, like between the two, or?
They don't always, depends how they plan them.
Got it.
Yeah, but so the internal lot lines are for townhomes are included as the main lot. Yeah, good question.
Andy, any other questions?
Almost.
Jessica?
No questions, thank you.
I have no questions either. So at this time, we'll turn it over to you, Abby. Welcome. Nice to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, guys. Good to see you guys. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sally, for taking that on. I'm just going to, she did a great job covering everything. I'm just going to go cover the questions that came up from last time, and how we address those. And then I can go through your comments here and answer Candace's. And I think the lot line got talked through with Andy's question, but let me just answer Candace's real quick. Sally, do you have do you want me to pull up the documents, or do you have those up?
I can pull whatever up. I've got all of your plans
Okay.
ready.
Great. If
just
you
tell
go
me
to just like a plan, the site plan or the first level plan, I can talk about the transformer clearances. The box, just to start, the box that you see is just the clearances from okay, so like the top left is the little white box with the T in it is the actual transformer. But the hatching shows the clearances that we have to keep any openings closed. Like you can't have any openings in those those hatching areas. So if you go each level through the plans, you'll see that same hatching, and it's just showing that, like, if there's a window, I think we have some fixed windows in the stairs that are in that hatched area, and those are just fixed and they're labeled fixed. So they just conform with Excel's requirements there. So that's just what the clearance is. It was just so they could see and make sure that all the openings were fixed and closed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I think I heard you say that in that clearance zone, you just can't have openings into the
Yeah.
building? Okay.
Yeah, and it goes up all the levels. And the only thing that's affecting this particular transformer on this project is we have two small windows in the stairwell that are labeled fixed and will be fixed. So it gives us the fenestration detailing and the openness, but it also conforms to Excel. So so that's what that is.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
How does that work with existing buildings east of this property? Because you're showing the transformer clearance zone off-site. So.
It going over to the next property?
Yeah.
Yeah, Excel addresses that, but it's not, it seems from the aerial, there's no conflict there as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so Excel has approved the location. So it's my understanding that all those clearances are okay.
That's my question.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. And then the lot vacate line is that got talked through. So as far as my list, how do I minimize this? Exit full screen. Okay, sorry. So the list in the packet that I have from all the questions, and Sally covered all of them, but I just wanted to clarify how we address them. The uncovered deck storage for the roof decks, those have been added to the calculation. with that 25%. We scooched the landscaping around so we're not dumping on top of trees. It has its own little space. Rooftop snow retention needs to be added to areas shedding on decks and driveways. That's been addressed. So nothing is dumping without guards on there. Grout's been added to the material board. The biggest concern that came up from the sketch plan meeting was from the neighbor, and we wanted to make sure we address that. They were concerned about like Sally was saying, the privacy on the third level in particular, going into the whole middle unit, but the biggest problem was the third level because we had a master deck off of the back with sliding glass doors. And so that is my understanding, it goes into their property, into their bedroom as well. So we switched the deck to the front of the building. I don't know if Sally, if you can switch to the either the renderings or the elevations.
They're there.
Okay, just keep going. So yeah, so in the back, the third level, the middle gray area, next to the brown, next to the brown, the darker brown on the third level, that was an exterior deck with a sliding glass door. We've removed that entirely, and we just put in high privacy windows, so no one should be in the line of sight into that neighbor's property. We have small windows in the stairwell just for light, and one window over the kitchen. But we did the trees that are there are not on our property, so those trees will stay. Like we can't legally even touch those, but we are adding a generous amount of additional our tree allotment to that back area. So hopefully that privacy will be maintained and added to for those neighbors back there. And so and just in general, all the windows in the back, there's those 3 second-story windows there's one bedroom in the one property, but we've tried to keep it minimal for the privacy, but we've added the trees in there as well, so we can just double down. But if you scroll down, I think, Sally, you can see the front. And this is the only major change that we've made since sketch plan. And hopefully it addresses the concerns, but in the middle unit, on the third level, we've just added that master deck out the front. So there's a railing that's been added there, and the sliding glass door, just a normal 3-bay window has been turned into a sliding glass door. And everything fits within the bulk plane as far as railings. So it hasn't affected any of that. So hopefully that adequately addressed that comment and that concern. And the visual of the front is okay with you guys as well. And then as far as Excel, we were going back and forth with Jessica. I've flattened some roofs back there. We have a lot of options for in the back for meter locations. So Jessica just said, looks okay for now. Let's just give it to your designer for when it goes to permit. So all that Excel comments have been addressed. So, yep. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that you guys have. That should be it.
Yep.
Abby, looks very nice. Ira here.
Hi, Ira.
The deck that you added, just a curiosity, there's a deck below it. Do you catch the water from the deck above? You do.
Yeah, it's an internal drain system. It's insulated and then runs down through the drainage through the building.
Thank you.
And snow storage has been added to the front too. We were adding, initially the back had double snow storage for that a master deck and the rooftop deck in that unit. You'll see the snow storage G has been added to the front, right where that post is, so we can shovel snow as well and dump it there.
Thank you, Abby.
Yeah.
Lena, questions?
Hey, I'm curious if these homes are gonna have air conditioning. I'm asking the question because there's a lot of west-facing windows, and I know that those heat load in the summer. So I'm just really just curious.
Just curious. Usually we don't. It's all radiant floor heating, so there's no forced air or ducting in there. We have, I have had clients in the past that add more of a passive air conditioning ability, but it's never really asked for or requested, honestly, in the climate. But there are ways that we have in the past turned radiant boiler systems into more of a passive cooling system as well, if needed.
I'm just curious if over time we're gonna end up seeing more buildings with air conditioning in Summit County, but it doesn't appear to be a thing right now.
Larger condos are turning to forced air now because you can add in that component of air conditioning. So I'm seeing it in like new builds and like Keystone and stuff. So larger buildings are switching that from that commonly used radiant into forced air because of that component.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's never anything that, I mean, it comes up every once in a while when you have a custom client from out of state, but that's interesting that they're doing that. It just hasn't come up for us in the past. So
thanks.
Yeah.
Ira, any other questions?
Those nice railings on the decks, they're horizontal. How low is the lowest bar? Thinking about shoveling.
Well, it has to be 4 inches off.
4.
There can't be anything bigger than 4 inches.
All right, thank you.
So you're going up and over, unfortunately. Yeah.
Candace, any questions for the applicant?
I have one follow-up question. This is my ignorance, and maybe it's for staff more than the applicant, but is there a requirement for how much of the lot can be built on?
Lot coverage, the maximum is 55% in the zone district, and they're at 52% coverage. Yep.
More to me in London.
Lot coverage does not include any pedestrian pathway under 3 feet or less. So sidewalks on like leading up to doorways and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you for the education. But I think it looks very beautiful.
Thank you.
April, any questions for the applicant?
Any questions, just comments, but we can finish questioning first.
Andy?
No, looks nice, Abby. No questions.
Jessica?
No questions. Thank you, Abby.
I don't either, Abby. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to open up the floor to public comment on this agenda item. If there's anybody online who has public comment, now is your opportunity, as there's no one here in the chambers. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand. I'm seeing no public comment, so I will close that portion of tonight's agenda, and we will move on to commissioner comments. Andy, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, I don't have much to say. I think it's been covered. Abby, you picked up everything that was asked of you. We appreciate the changes you made. I don't have, for the record, I don't have any issues still with bulk plane encroachments. And I think the parking looks like it works. Yeah, I think it's ready to go.
Jessica?
I'll echo what Andy said. Yeah. Thank you, Abby.
Lena?
Thank you, Abby. No additional comments. Looks good.
Ira?
Congratulations. See you when you move dirt.
Candace?
Thanks, Sarah.
I just want to acknowledge that you listened to the neighbor and adjusted the windows for the neighbor. I feel like that's a really good community vibe that you probably didn't have to do, but I think it goes a long way in acknowledging people's day-to-day and walking around their bedroom. So, so thanks for listening to people and yeah.
Absolutely.
April?
Yeah, I was gonna echo the same sentiment. I think it looks great. It's come together. It's a good plan, and I really appreciate you taking into the community comments and making adjustments. And I honestly think that having a west deck is gonna be nicer for the
Yeah.
residents anyways, because they get more sunlight and can use it more. So congratulations on pulling this all together.
Thanks.
Abby, I always appreciate your consideration and taking our comments to heart. It's much appreciated, and I'd also like to say thank you for removing that deck and being so neighborly. I think that goes a long way, and I think the process is important, and if community members feel like they're heard by these applicants and by this commission, I think it's good operation for all of us. So
Absolutely.
kudos to you, and we will look forward to your next new Frisco project. So congratulations.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Andy's gonna make a motion.
With respect to file number MAJ 23-0008, I move that the recommended findings set forth in the January 18th, 2024 staff report be made, and that the recommended conditions set forth therein be taken, and that the planning commission hereby approves the request for the major site plan application for the proposed new residential townhome development located at 400 Granite Street, lots 11 and 12, block 19, Frisco Town Subdivision.
Second. Who was that? Emily, will you please take a vote?
Commissioner Connolly, Commissioner Day, Commissioner Forsyth,
Yes.
Commissioner Lesmes, Commissioner Stabile,
Yes.
Commissioner Tain,
Yes.
and Commissioner Withrow.
Yes. Thank you, Abby. Best of luck to y'all.
Thank you guys as always. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay.
Any staff updates?
Couple, follow up from last meeting. Thank you to those who outreached in with their interest in being on our stakeholder groups for both housing needs assessment and comp plan. I didn't know. That's okay. Oh, I wasn't taking official ones yet, don't worry. So I'm leading into that. So some people jumped ahead and I appreciate it and let me know they were interested, but it wasn't like a firm cutoff or anything. Starting with the housing needs assessment, last town council meeting, they did go ahead and they approved a contract that we have now entered with Dynamic Planning and Service. And they are teamed up with Triple Point Strategic Consulting, Castlewood Capital, and Western Spaces. So they actually have a big financial group connected with them, teamed up with this. So we're excited, which is kind of what led them to be our primary choice and recommendation. So we are ready to kick that off because we now have a signed contract. So what we're looking for is if there's interest, one or a maximum of 2 planning commission members to be on the stakeholder committee for the housing needs assessment and strategic housing action plan. For that, we are planning, there'll obviously be a lot of open houses, public open houses will be coming before planning commission with updates. The stakeholder group itself, we are anticipating they will be meeting during work hours 8 to 5, not all day, obviously, but so we're requesting if you are willing to be on that committee, that you can try to make meetings work during the business day. And it's going to be the same for both committees. We know it's not the easiest for some of you, but it's just easier overall for the project. And then, of course, there will be plenty of other opportunities to get input. So with that said, if you have an interest, what I'm going to do tonight is just take names and then I will pass them on to James, our housing specialist, and he's running this whole plan and project. So with that said, I have for the housing interest already, Candace and April. Correct me if I'm wrong. You both said yes, you were interested. Does anyone else want to be considered to be? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm staring at you because I was curious. I'm not trying to ignore everybody else. Anyone else want to be considered? And then James will kind of maybe come up with some estimated days, times over the next 6 months and see who the best out of the 3 as far as scheduling works. We're not looking at anything else really, but does that work? Okay, so we'll let you know. So thank you, Lena, April, and Candace. Okay. And we'll probably go with 2, just so we don't need a quorum. Post for quorums. And then with that follow-up, Emily, do you want to give an update on the comp plan?
Sure. We released an RFP for the comp plan 2024 update. The last update was the community plan in 2019. So we'll be doing that update this year. We are bringing a contract or recommendation to council next Tuesday to go forward with design workshop. So assuming that they approve, we'll be starting that process as well. So same thing, we'll need a stakeholder meeting. We'll have 2 of you hopefully on there. I don't know, did anyone email for?
Yes. Is it?
Yes, okay, perfect. And
Anyone else interested in the comp plan?
I would be interested.
Okay, thank you. Cool. And I will say a cool plug about our
If
timing.
you only go with one, go with Jessica. She's kind of.
I want to hang out with Kelsey more. So we'll take both of us.
I think 2 would be great because that way you're not both committed. You can also kind of figure one at a meeting if you have a lot of conflicts and stuff. So no, I think 2 is great. Thank you both. Does that work for everybody as your reps? And a cool thing about our timing of the comp plan, what we're doing, because we got DOLA funding to help us with it, is we are bringing in a lot of elements that don't exist right now, like resiliency, water, and we have other ones, obviously, like housing and things. But not to say it's going to get approved, but there's current state legislature that's going to require certain elements such as resiliency and water that aren't required now. So we're actually ahead of, if that state law comes into effect next year, we're already doing a comp plan that has those required elements. So kind of exciting that we're, thanks to DOLA's requirements, we're already hitting those as we do it, so.
And yeah, we'll be taking the housing plan and integrating it into the comp plan, so we're not overlapping with the 2, but using both as a resource.
Thank you. All right, only other quick updates are just like to try to keep you updated on when items you saw go before council. So this coming Tuesday on the 23rd, Emily is bringing the 101 West Main PUD before council. So that's moving forward next week for our first reading of ordinance, and we'll see how that goes.
How many meetings does it have to go?
2 readings.
Okay.
Yep. And then she has all of your recommendations, obviously, that she'll go through. An update on the housing code amendments. Town council requested we bring those to a work session to discuss more. But the legislature and financing needs of some of the legislature, I don't know if it's legislature is not the right, but basically a lot of the requirements of the funding sources we're looking at are changing, and even as we do different things. And our projects that projects that the town is involved in helping with financing through development agreements are constantly changing. So staff is reevaluating if we even need to do that or if we need to take another approach. And that's just due to evolving changes in state policies and our project developers financing models. So we kind of put that on hold. We're not bringing it forward this week. We want to kind of get some direction from town council and potentially propose something slightly different. So that what you saw and recommended against is not currently going forward right now. So update for you on that one. And then pretty sure it's safe to say that the next meeting is canceled. We have no public hearings. We didn't confirm as staff, but we have no items that we have posted. We were kind of waiting to make sure no code amendments came up as a result of this last one, but we have nothing. So I'm pretty sure you're going to be no meeting at the next meeting, but Kyle will confirm by email. And last update on my end is, and I thought of this as I was talking to April. Thank you for coming to the employee party. We missed a lot of you last night. However, I wanted to also remind all of you that you have really a good grasp of what's going on in reading the plans, but you are always welcome if you want to contact the planner on it, if you want to ask questions ahead of time. We were talking about it recently and Emily's like, yeah, I used to at a former job actually get calls all the time and I never get calls. So,
But I used to do.
oh, well, I didn't actually want to set you up for that, but
Are you coming tonight? Also, questions. So we're not doing that, but.
and we will not call you on the meeting day to check in. However, you don't need to, but any of you are welcome to contact the planner and ask questions ahead of time if it helps you. And I say that as I'm thinking that we have Candace and April and some newer members too.
Sometimes though, I feel like other people's questions help me
Yeah.
that I wouldn't have thought to ask. So it's like if all these questions went underground, I'd be like, oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Like something that Andy asks is definitely something that I ask. And so it's like sometimes the questions are very helpful
For
and
me being new, it's more around like understanding the code and getting the details about how to read plans and all that kind of stuff, right? So,
yeah.
yeah, a little more hand holding.
I think when I started, I used to email Katie all the time. Yeah, like, what? I don't get it, Katie.
To get a closer look at the plans, because we can always print a page off on the sustainability, so not too many pages, but you know, if it just helps anyone process and look through it, we can definitely do that.
So what's going on with Winter Plaza? Everyone's a big ride out.
Yeah, actually, so it's good to go.
Yes.
Emma has actually.
We are trying to get them to a DRC so that there's so many different staff and so many different agencies right now that we are trying to get them to that. Our development review committee is when, before anybody starts a project, other than like a single family or small addition, we bring that applicant or property owner forward and they meet with water and sanitation and building and planning, engineering. Excel usually can hop on that meeting also. And that is a chance where they hear all the initial feedback before they move into an application.
So they have to come back to the application even though there's a foundation and
They
the
did
paper
not.
said
It's
like.
The last thing we heard, but when we met with the gentleman who purchased, who's under contract in December, he was very adamant it would stay the same appearance and footprint. However, we're bringing them to a DRC to make sure of that. And because so much has changed, we want to make sure if people have different regulations, such as tap fees. Is he going to follow new tap fees or tap fees from when the original building permit? But I do know he had worked with the original architect and so I think he has rights to use all of the previously approved plans.
And everything that's in place, I mean, we're hearing about it in Dillon, like, oh, these foundations have weathered for
We
5
asked them that. He
years
said
and.
they were fine.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, more technical staff than
Yeah.
the planners will research that, but so we just want to get them in to make sure everyone's on the same page. But as of his initial conversation with planning, he's not going to need to come back to planning commission, and his building permits are only a few things left. And hopefully he'll be able to pull those, and that's why he's anticipating spring construction.
Love it.
I don't remember a food hall though. Wasn't there a?
It was, so there was restaurants and offices. So, and that's where his food hall is primarily using these spaces, the office, using a use that's still allowed, like counter space. You pick what one you want, and then you go sit either outside or in the community area.
There was a lot of talk about bringing people to eat outside and heat the outdoors. Is that fit into our sustainability
So
code or?
A
Like,
heads up that if anything changes with allowing especially gas, that he needs to be thinking about that because it is a potential in the town over the next, I don't know how, what timing, but so we kind of talked to him that he should probably consider that.
yeah, I mean, when you're skiing and you're wearing all your ski gear, but to me to like promote people to heat the outdoors is kind of anti.
No, it's a good point. And
Hillary is working on that this year, winter, I guess, bringing those forward, so I don't know exactly the timing on that.
so he could, and he's been told he might even not be able to do it if it comes into effect for the town.
Yeah.
So good question.
Does any of the changing use affect his parking counts?
No, luckily. I think Emily, I forget who did it, sorry. Someone did a good thorough analysis of reviewing what was allowed based on the old youth permitted uses and
So
what.
we want something.
Well, I don't want to.
Office requires the same amount for.
How about Foots Rest? Any update?
They were moving that one cabin.
It stopped.
It stopped? Is it still there? I'm
Still there.
It's still there,
Yeah.
move.
The
It's
town manager's
reinforced.
office is in continuous contact to make sure he's moving forward on finance. And so far it
It
appears.
seems really strange to move our historical buildings and then like he doesn't get financing and has this historic overlay thing and.
But I've
Are we
heard
gonna
he's
lose
still
buildings?
optimistic that the financing is gonna come through, but I haven't heard it has or that he hasn't gotten back in touch to talk about anything with contact. So I don't know.
ID requirement before it.
Yeah, the former staff gave a few extensions, so it had been, the permits had actually, building permits had been extended a couple of times. And so I believe the next one is almost up. I think the last one I can't remember, but I know it's pretty close, which is why even the manager's office is trying to track it. So it may end up having to be deemed expired.
Speaking of extensions, where are we with the Centura workforce housing? Are they, I think the last time we asked, we weren't sure if their approvals had expired yet. Do we know if they had expired?
I'm gonna email you a follow-up just to make sure I actually get back to you on that one. I forgot to check.
Because Because that one definitely, I don't remember when we approved that, but
No, I forgot to check that one, sorry. Thanks, Sandy.
It was the pandemic.
Yeah, and if it
feel like it's a
expires, don't they
2020.
have to take their fencing down? Like, is it-
Yeah.
What triggers it to take the construction?
Well,
fencing
now
down?
luckily that the planners are taking bonds in for it, but at that point, no, but we could probably make them if it's expired.
It seems just like that spot. I get it for the safety on Winter Plaza, but
We do always put in conditions, it's required to be re-vegged also.
if they don't, if their permit's expired, it seems like they would need to take the fence down and do, at
Yep.
least do a temporary.
Tied to the demo permit, there should be a condition that it be re-vegged.
I don't want the fence to come down, and what's behind it's worse.
like on Winter Plaza, I'm like,
Yeah.
at least it's off the sidewalk now.
Yeah, no, sorry, I apologize, I
No, that's
forgot to
okay.
put that one up.
It's been ongoing for a little while.
Any other questions or do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,